All the way back in September of 2009, a tragic and bizarre piece of internet history was discovered by members of the r/IMA community for a post titled, "I did heroin yesterday. I am not a drug user and have never done anything besides pot when I was a teen. Ask me anything." The name of this user was SpontaneousH, and the extensive lore behind his account would be shared among internet forums for years to come, and serve as a prerequisite to anyone even remotely intrigued by opioid substances. The contents of a post like this are going to be hard to stomach in general, but what makes this case so disturbing in particular is the fact that one foolish decision, made out of both haste and compromise, was all it took to unlock the door to years of immense suffering. He tells us, "I have never been a drug user. I drank once in a while and smoked pot years ago back when I was a teen in high school a few times, and that's it. I'm 24 now, have a master's and a well-paying full-time job. Yesterday, I happened to stop by a row of benches to check some messages on my phone when a dealer on the bench to my right asked me if I need anything. My life has been pretty boring the last few years, and I feel like I haven't really lived, taken any risks, or done anything crazy, so I figured what the hell, maybe I'll buy some pot. It's been a while." I said yeah, and after asking me several times if I'm a cop, he gives me his number and tells me to meet him at a fast food place several blocks away, and he will hook me up. We sit down, and after hounding me asking if I'm a cop, he asks me what I need. I tell him I just want a dime bag, and he says something like, "Nah, sorry man, I only sell half ounces. You can take that, and I've got some coke in each." At this point, I didn't want to buy a half ounce of pot. I probably never smoked more than an eighth in my life, but then I started considering his last word, heroin. I've heard so much about it and how crazy addictive it is, and seen it in the movies and on TV, and it really started to intrigue me. I've always wondered, what would it be like to do heroin? Out of nowhere, I say I'll take the H, and we do the deal there. I use the card to get it into fine powder and move a small bump to the side which I inhaled for a dollar bill. I didn't feel anything yet, so I snorted a small line which was essentially half the bag. I waited, and in a few minutes, I had the most pleasurable feeling of pure relaxation and bliss wash over me. I just sat there, and everything felt amazing. I nodded off, and it was great. I had the TV on, but wasn't paying attention, and I must have sat around for 4 hours doing nothing but feel total pleasure. It was like a full body orgasm times 10 that just kept going on and on. I was blown away by the power of this drug, and just how orgasmic it felt. I never understood why people did drugs before and got so hooked on them, but now I see why. I have the urge to do it again, but I will resist not to do it, at least not for a long time. To call this account terrifying would be an understatement. The pharmacological power of heroin is undeniable, and through this post we could already observe addictive behavioral patterns superseding rational thought. He already mentally conceded to the fact that he will use it again at some point, and this is just from one interaction. Many commenters in the thread would attempt to warn him of the inevitable outcome of this endeavour, but sadly, under unsurprising circumstances, we would get an update from SpontaneousH just 2 weeks later to confirm the suspicions of most, wherein he tells us that he hasn't stopped using since his first initial contact and has in fact progressed to intravenous administration, which of course increases bioavailability and thus potentiates the effects. It's here where we can really start to sympathise with the brutal cycle of relapse and withdrawal, as SpontaneousH shares this harrowing update on his condition just 2 weeks after using for the first time. Wednesday night update. Fucking I'm still withdrawing, throwing up and sweating out gallons of sweat. I really want to use and relapse right now. I know I shouldn't, these urges are so strong and overpowering. Please help me if you can before I get the chance to. Things take an even darker turn, however, as we begin to see how his usage is taking a toll on his relationships in the real world. I was doing everything right, have been clean, and somehow a rumour got out that I've been using and my girlfriend found out, and she basically broke up with me last night, but is now putting that decision on hold. I have some serious unrelated business/work I need to attend to in 2 hours, and I don't know if I'll be in any state to be able to and be ready. I can't stop crying. Fuck heroin. Fuck my life. I guess I don't need to say that since heroin pretty much fucked my life for me in under 2 weeks. I just want to die. In just 2 weeks, one decision made out of pure recklessness was impacting every aspect of SpontaneousH's life. The vicious cycle of addiction got to a point where he was no longer able to hide his use, and this had detrimental effects to both his network of people and also his health as he continued to spiral. He was fully entrenched in his addictive tendencies at this stage, and because of these circumstances, it meant that we didn't receive a meaningful update from him for close to a year. But he did eventually log into Reddit to update those intrigued. However, It was an update nobody was happy to receive, and only served to vindicate those who have been warning him the entire time. I am a heroin, opioid, multi-substance addict with bipolar disorder headed to rehab tomorrow because I didn't listen to Reddit. I OD'd 1 week ago and I'm in a psych hospital. Ask me anything. Tomorrow, I leave this psychiatric unit to go to a substance abuse unit for a couple of weeks before heading to a long-term residential rehab program. I was technically dead from a fentanyl overdose last week and was revived with multiple shots of Narcan. If I was found 10 minutes later, I would have been dead for good according to EMS. Reddit warned me I would become an addict when I did an Ask Me Anything a little over a year ago after first trying heroin. Needless to say, I didn't listen and am now paying the consequences. Whether or not it would have made a difference is questionable considering my personality. A staggering number of bipolar people have become addicts. This is my third extremely close encounter with death from drugs in the last year. I have done more than you probably know exist. This is my third chance at life and I don't know if I will get any more. Ask me anything. SpontaneousH had been dancing with death for a while at this point, obviously struggling mentally, but brushing this close with the Reaper might have finally been the wake-up call needed for him to get his act together and finally look towards the path of recovery. Unfortunately, for both SpontaneousH and those interested in the saga, he would make a post to the r/opiates recovery community after a lengthy Reddit absence to announce his achievement of 6 years of sobriety, stating that I'm now almost 6 years clean from all drugs and alcohol, and life is good. The post history of SpontaneousH shows how one moment of foolishness is all it takes to completely derail your life. And that is the exact reason why I believe his story merits a mention in any Reddit thread that is drug or addiction adjacent. And it oftentimes is, with SpontaneousH himself dropping into the thread on occasion to share his perspective. But despite how well documented this incident is, these people just never seem to learn. And as we'll unfortunately discover diving deeper into the degeneracy, being able to tell the story of your recovery is a privilege, and the fate of SpontaneousH will begin to look a lot more desirable in comparison. You don't even have to use the internet to recognize the blatant stupidity of a large portion of the TikTok user base. And that's because the reckless stunts performed in the pursuit of clout often end up making it to the news due to the severe consequences.
Parenting alert. A Wisconsin family speaking out about losing their 9-year-old after they say she participated in the so-called blackout challenge.
Heartbroken. That's how the superintendent of Amherst Pelham Regional Schools describes his reaction when he heard a student died after attempting a TikTok challenge.
Yeah. These challenges that emerge solely for the purpose of gaining attention have pretty much always existed on the internet. But in 2020, arguably the most catastrophic of the bunch emerged through the Benadryl challenge.
Medical experts warn young people are popping a bunch of Benadryl and potentially risking fatality for followers.
It's self-explanatory really, but the premise of the challenge revolved around consuming a ridiculous dose of the otherwise mundane antihistamine to achieve effects akin to a schizophrenic episode, which actually consist of realistic visual, tactile, and audio hallucinations, seizures, extreme confusion and short-term memory loss, dangerous cardiovascular activity, risk of early onset dementia, and ultimately, death. More TikToks featuring, and thus inadvertently promoting the discussion of DPH were observed in 2020, through mostly ironic posts making jokes about the Hat Man, which was a common hallucination people reported when taking extreme doses. I do want to emphasize that a sizable majority of these Benadryl-related posts were made in obvious satire, but given the impressionable and clout-hungry nature of TikTok's young demographic, the damage was already dealt. Multiple teenagers would go on to ingest upwards of 20 diphenhydramine pills, often on camera, in an attempt to capitalize on the trend and gain a following on the platform, which ultimately resulted in the deaths of 48 prominently young people in just 2020 alone. We see tragic incidents like these appear on the news quite frequently, yet it's always to report on the outcome of the disaster.
The family sharing this graphic image of Jacob in the hospital so others can see firsthand what the challenge did to him.
But what makes cases like these even more disturbing is watching them unfold in real time, being a spectator to the deterioration of a person post by post until eventually silence. And that is exactly where this story is headed as we take a look through the chilling post history of u/got swarmed, which truly shines a light on the brutality of deliriance as a whole, turning away anyone still interested in ingesting the substance themselves. The community of r/DPH is one of the most depressing that Reddit has to offer, often being referred to as a graveyard. While mostly flooded with ironic memes and shitposts nowadays, the true users of this evil substance can still be found posting their fucked up escapades if you filter the content correctly. These include, but are not limited to, incoherent posts while under the influence, pictures of the infamous pink pills pre-consumption, and of course the obligatory hospital selfie upon a nightmarish overdose experience. While this community sparks curiosity among many, thousands dropping by weekly in fact, you would have to be on an entirely different level of degeneracy to be an active member who consumes the drug on a consistent basis. But of course, this is the exact description we will be taking a look at now through u/GotSwarmed, who created his account for the sole purpose of joining this subreddit, documenting his fate for all to witness in horror. While all of his actual posts have been deleted or removed, we still have a lengthy log of comments to look through. And the first element to stand out on his profile, which became apparent through this archive, is the very small number of communities that he was actually active in. One of the first interactions between GotSwarmed and other members of the DPH Reddit in April of 2024 shows just how far gone he actually was this early into his post history. While the initial post is deleted, contextual evidence tells us that he shared an experience of taking 1,000 milligrams of DPH to alleviate boredom whilst on a long flight. Other users, of course, questioned this decision, and upon receiving a responsible suggestion of just reading a book, GotSwarmed responded by stating that DPH makes me too stupid to read, which prompted another user to reply in affirmation of the original response. I think what Robotic Greg meant was, instead of consuming retarded amounts of Benadryl, maybe try reading. This suggestion would not extend beyond this mention, however, as GotSwarmed would continue to share his love for DPH just a few comments later in a different thread, stating, "I love DPH, it's my drug of choice," along with opiates. An equally detached individual would chime in on the discourse in this thread, sharing a pretty jumbled agreement of GotSwarmed's comment, which says, "Dude, I know right? DPH and cigs are my top. I don't know, I love cigs even more than weed. It's just so calming on cigs. I love them so much, but weed is definitely third. I've tried coke once, that shit just had him really sweaty and shaking. I don't know if I did it right." These types of people are not your average drug user, and I could barely even read out what that comment said. And it really isn't hard to assume that this usage of DPH is brought on for a heavy motivation of escapism. But it's just so bizarre when these DPH users in question state they have a preference to delirium whilst actually having access to substances with known recreational properties. These much more suitable options, however, would only serve to complement GotSwarmed's main preference for DPH, never actually replacing it. And this period in the sequence of archived comments are where the consequences of his seemingly suicidal recklessness begin to emerge. "I keep overdosing and reviving and then doing it all again, but I love it." An admittedly nondescript account of one of these experiences was shared through a comment by GotSwarmed on this post. "How did you survive an overdose? Took a dose, remembered none of it. Friend starts to say that I've been losing consciousness and I'm not breathing. I asked them, what? Woke up 2 days later in the ICU." A singular overdose is all it would take for most to at least slow down their usage. But if it wasn't painfully obvious by now, this is not a responsible or mentally stable individual being covered. And suicidal intent being a major factor for his radical use of DPH makes perfect sense on all fronts. And this inevitable trajectory that GotSwarmed seemed to be on unfortunately culminated on the 23rd of April 2024 in one of the most disturbing threads observable on Reddit. 14 grams in 2 days trip report would be the last post ever uploaded by u/GotSwarmed, and his final 12 comments within this thread perfectly showcase the nightmare that delirium addiction forces you to live out in the real world. After consuming this enormous dose, it wouldn't take long until concerning updates would be shared underneath the original post, which not only display the symptoms he was facing, but also emphasizes the suicidal mentality of his, since any legitimate advice being offered would just be ignored, as in his own words, "I'm not gonna die, bro, I'm literally in the hospital still. Other addicts out there doing this shit all the time." This mindset would not grant GotSwarmed invincibility, however, as he would state in the thread that his abuse of DPH was even affecting his bladder, going as far as to have a temporary catheter installed because he could no longer urinate. While still inside the hospital, if actually there at all given the intense delirium, GotSwarmed would post his final ever update, announcing that he was going to dose again, stating, "Gonna get caught, but managed to dose again, probably will be restrained for a bit, LeMayer. Will post update and pics when I can, DPH for life. The typos and overall lack of coherency are obvious markers of deterioration, and this is when his account would log offline for the final time. It wouldn't take long for members of the community to begin fearing the worst, especially those that had witnessed this saga unfold in real time. So within a few days, users would upload to the subreddit inquiring on the welfare of Got Swarmed, and the inevitable news that many had been expecting was unfortunately delivered through a personal friend of his on the 25th of April 2024. My friend, 19M, passed away from a Benadryl overdose. What now? I'm grieving so intensely right now, I don't even know what to say. None of us had any idea of how much he was using. He was active in this subreddit and would bring it up occasionally, but asked me not to check it as it was personal to him. I didn't know what DPH was, so it was no cause for concern. I will be haunted by not knowing this for the rest of my life. I visited him, but he just wasn't himself. He couldn't speak or move. He couldn't breathe on his own. Why couldn't it have been anything else? Why didn't I think to check in? So many questions raced through my mind, and even though he was really out of it, I worry it was painful. Was it? Is this my fault? What happens now? How do I accept this? While the profile described is identical to Got Swarmed, an edit made to this tragic post would remove any doubts on whether this was actually him. Edit. I have had people ask me about this, and I can confirm that Hawk was active here as Got Swarmed. I don't know what difference this makes to the users here, but I hope there may be closure in knowing. I appreciate you for at the very least keeping him company in the time leading up to his death. The fate of you/Got Swarmed, while incredibly tragic, is only one of the multiple fatal overdoses attributed to DPH. But what makes this class of substances even more terrifying is the relative weakness of DPH when compared to a drug like scopolamine, the main active compound found within Datura. The profoundly detrimental effects this group of drugs can inflict on a person are so extreme that the US military would look to develop a chemical warfare agent using the category in the 60s, where doses of only 2 micrograms per kilogram of body weight were reported to last up to 10 days, with vivid 78-hour-long peaks consisting of realistic hallucinations, amnesia, and loss of motor control. There's a reason this altered state of consciousness was being weaponized by the US, and that is due to the pure torment that these chemicals will inflict on your psyche.
What you're about to see is no act. James is the one on the right.
Have you taken some drugs today? No.
James and his friend are truly in a world known only to them. Here you see them pass a cigarette to each other, only there is no cigarette. James' friend later smokes it and actually flicks the ashes. James styles his hair with an imaginary comb. He beckons to friends in the room that only he can see. Motor coordination skills are almost completely gone.
Please sit down. You okay?
The thing that's so scary is I don't remember anything about this. I don't remember anything.
To willingly ingest a substance like this with little to no research would be signing a death wish, and that is exactly what our next subject in u/Flippnflopp would go on to do, in one of Reddit's most bizarre sagas, including possibly the most blatant display of ignorance that the site has to offer. During an otherwise ordinary Monday on the 17th of April, 2017, a post was uploaded to the r/drugs community, which would later go on to become a Reddit mystery. The user behind this elusive online presence is u/Flippnflopp, and the dangerous intentions of his that would go on to be revealed in this post would leave knowledgeable community members stunned by his decision making, forcing them to sternly warn him of his impending danger that he was walking straight into. The post reads, "Hi guys, I finally got some Datura to try out. I'm free tomorrow and I have the house to myself, so I'm really excited to try the effects of this interesting plant. I have around 60 seeds and some dried flowers and leaves. How much should I take for a nice first time trip? Would 15 seeds be enough? Sources on the internet tell me a regular dose is around 10 to 20, but I've seen some talk about 30 plus seeds. Thanks guys." The level of confidence of which these suicidal plans were announced with borders on delusion. And you cannot blame the portion of users in this thread that began questioning the authenticity of these claims. But regardless, people still went out on a limb to warn him of the brutal consequences ahead if he was to ingest this crazy dose that he mentioned. One user even detailed an old experience from high school with Datura in an attempt to deter u/Flippnflopp, which he claims he is still scarred from. The trip report is as follows. "Well, I bought 2 Datura anoxia plants from a local greenhouse and ate/smoked both of them over the course of about 2 weeks. I never noticed too many effects initially. Dry eyes and mouth. hot flush skin, rapid heartbeat, but I was 100% in a state of psychosis for that whole time, and for about 2 weeks after I stopped using it. My friends got increasingly worried about me, and I finally broke down mentally. About a month later, I got diagnosed with generalized anxiety disorder and severe panic disorder, with derealization and depersonalization. The vast majority of users who commented in this thread strongly advised against taking the seeds, but even with this much sway to the contrary of Flippnflopp's plans, he would go on to make an edit to his original post where he would state that he had actually consumed the tea, with a promise to update those curious within an hour when he's feeling some of the effects. So people waited, and after a few hours, nothing on the other end. This, in turn, would lead to those believing in the troll theory to feel even stronger conviction in their beliefs. And a lot of people were honestly quite disappointed that there was no update from him. But everything would soon change, as approximately 24 hours later, a very concerning comment was uploaded to a thread on the gaming subreddit by him, in a post completely separate from any other discourse he had featured in up to yet. The post was nothing out of the ordinary, just a clip from the game Totally Accurate Battle Simulator, but the complete incoherence displayed in this comment, alongside his previous post about the Datura, made putting things together incredibly easy. It's evident from his message that he's fully inebriated at this point. For a start, you don't even need to be able to recognize a mammoth to identify it here, as OP outright states that they are mammoths on the screen. But beyond that, the consistent typos and lack of updates to his first post begin to point to the reality where this person genuinely ingested a Datura megadose, and that this is not some low-life troll just looking to scare people. Still, many users, especially those just now aware of Flippnflopp for his comment on the gaming thread, believed he was just a troll. But as the weeks turned to months, and the months turned to years, the account of u/Flippnflopp remained inactive. And the unfortunate possibility that this naive, likely teenage person documented their death through Reddit looked like a much more likely outcome as time continued to pass without any activity from the account whatsoever. A big trend so far in the video has been taking the most hardcore of substances on impulse, with little and oftentimes zero research on the psychological and physical effects of the drug. And while it's true that a lot of these cases end up manifesting out of pure ignorance and naivety, the majority are spurred on through debilitating mental health conditions like severe depression, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder, leading to a general detachment from consequence, which can only go down one road when you look at the title of the video. And as we move on to the next entry, we'll be taking a look at the crazy post history of a schizophrenic polyaddict and how these obviously conflicting traits ultimately led to an early demise. The comment history and communities that u/PieStrict466 would frequent were surprisingly normal at the beginning. He would be quite active in r/UK trees, even giving responsible advice to other members from time to time. And on the whole, there was nothing out of the ordinary during this stage, unless you'd count his love for cannabis as a red flag. However, with the progression of time, and almost a daily streak of updates, his lifelong mental health issues and subsequent usage for pharmaceuticals would be revealed, with the true depths of these mental struggles highlighted in a comment of his in the r/ADHD UK community. The classic mental health issues aren't a thing. God, I would love to swap bodies and minds with the people who think so narrow-minded like that, for them to experience 24 hours in the life of someone who suffers with anything mentally. I'm currently on the waiting list to get an assessment. It's over a year. Sucks, but it is what it is. I had the exact same issue as you with my parents. You're just bad behaved, lazy, etc. It took them years to actually understand, and that took me getting sectioned and then watching my mind and life fall apart. With this mental profile established, the communities he would go on to frequent absolutely call for concern. He developed a strong interest in psychedelics. Not just any, but DMT in particular, as somebody who is already predisposed to schizophrenia, as shown through his multiple posts to r/DMT and also r/2CB, which led to a feed of his only containing posts in drug-related communities, and this is where the true severity of his usage is revealed. This is his full list of substances taken, and keep in mind, even more get added to this list farther down the line. 2CB, 2CB-FLY, DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, weed, 4-MMC, 3-MMC, 2-MMC, alcohol, meth, Eurospeed, H number 3 and 4, dextroamphetamine, soma, clonazepam, alprazolam, temazepam, midazolam, nitrazepam, lorazepam, etizolam, risperidone, olanzapine, quetiapine, ketamine, shrooms, LSD, DOM, DOC, pregabalin, changa, kratom, canna, salvia 15x, original K2, modafinil, armodafinil, MDMA, raw opium, GHB, liquid morphine, mescaline. Probs more shit I'm missing / can't be asked to put on the list like antidepressants etc. Never been a huge fan of coke / crack, so never plan on adding that to my list. A functional life just isn't possible with this monstrous level of usage, especially when accompanied with a plethora of mental illnesses. And the effects of polyaddiction were clearly getting in the way of Pystrict's responsibilities, ironically outlined under a post in the r/schizophrenia community. Good luck, working is tough. Was forced to quit, and I don't even know why. Can keep you busy though. This unknown dismissal would soon be brought to light, however, for a post of his asking, has anyone ever been fired due to withdrawals from a drug? Similar to a late-stage dementia patient, a brief moment of lucidity was shown from him before the drug usage reached its final stage, where some brutal realization and self-reflection could be observed. My schizophrenia isn't caused by drug misuse, however it does make it worse. I've had symptoms since teen and diagnosed at 19. I normally take benzos, stimulants, edibles, and sometimes opiates, and take pregabalin daily. I use these substances to cope. They do help me, however I feel so guilty when I do them and I get screamed at. They don't even feel good anymore, but I just need something. Even if it feels bad, I'm still in control. I want to control my reality. Hopefully soon I can get my depot so I can kick the drugs. They barely even do anything because my receptors are fully blocked from meds, lol. But I still do them and get full side effects for little actual effects. Despite the clarity and full awareness of where this path leads, no action was taken to actually improve these conditions. In fact, things just got even worse, as a picture was uploaded by Pystrict featuring a batch of meth he just picked up, and unsurprisingly, addiction was in full force, and his post history from this point onwards reflected that and some. Despite seeming invincible up to this point, having taken a substance from every category essentially, it wouldn't last like this forever. And a post from him on the 1st of May 2026 to the r/drugs community would concern many active members. 1.1 grams of tramadol. Am I fucked? So I took 10 150mg pills of tramadol. I'm also on 250mg of meth orally, and I didn't know if there was any interaction because I can't be asked to research it. I've took 3 150mg oral doses of meth several times and nothing bad happened. Just felt like a speedball, but pretty weak. So I took more. 7 to be exact. I know it's a high dose, but what is the threshold for tramadol to go from you're okay to you're fucked? The potential for a fatal seizure on a combination with these doses is practically 100%. And as explained by this commenter, he is miles beyond the reported seizure threshold for just tramadol, on top of 600mg of pregabalin and also 250mg of meth. Most commenters in the thread were already concerned. But after observing zero activity on the profile of Pystrict after multiple years of daily posting, the probability of his death was extremely high, and these suspicions were unfortunately confirmed by a friend of his not too long after his final post. Hello, friend of u/Pystrict466. After checking his Reddit account, we chatted a fair bit here, and sending his post to his family, I thought I would provide an update as there were a lot of people asking and sending their hope in the replies. Sadly, he passed away shortly after due to a consistent violent seizure. I believe he didn't commit suicide, just made a very silly mistake. He was schizophrenic and would go on and off meds causing psychosis and would abuse drugs while in that state. He was not of sound mind while taking all of that. Please, please, please stay safe when consuming drugs. Do your research. Don't do silly doses. Don't mix drugs. I hope this post helps someone in the future and helps the people who are asking get closure.